And now we want to investigate a certain aspect of the two versions of the Decalogue. We're discussing the Ten Commandments of the Decalogue many times, and so, in fact, first of all, yesterday we spoke about the reason that the introduction to the Decalogue is on the basis, I am Hashem your God who took you out me'eretz Mitzrayim mibeit avodim. Who took you out from the land of Egypt and the home of enslavement, Beit Avadim. And why does it not begin, since this Decalogue, especially also as it was really intended for all mankind, so why was it introduced as saying, talking out from Egypt, and why not introduce as saying who created you, created the world?
Yes.
So let me read you now a paraphrase of this question, which is brought in the famous work of Rabbi Yehuda Halevi. We know many streets in Israel are named after him, as one of the greatest poets and one of the greatest philosophers of the Jewish people. So it says here that the way in which this debate between a non-Jewish, very intelligent monarch from a group of tribes in the Ural Mountains, and he made a synopsis, a symposium, of inviting various great scholars, which is the ideal way of life. So it says that he invited one of the great philosophical experts of his time to describe his philosophy. He invited a great Christian scholar. And then he invited one of the wise people of Islam and asked him, what is your view of the basis of wisdom and action? So he said to him, yeah, we believe in the unity and eternity of God, and that He created the world, and His relationship to man. We took away from God any form of material description. If there's anything which seems to be material concerning God, we explain it as just being a way of making us understand the greatness of God. Because the book of our teaching, these are the words of God. And we call the whole world to come to the teaching of Islam. And we say if they will listen to the word of God, they will have a great paradise. You will have a physical paradise where there will be an abundance of the best food and drink and the best, most pleasurable fulfillment of sexual desires, whatever he wants. And the punishment will be that he will go to a fire which will destroy him and bring him suffering forever. It continues in this manner. So then he went and called others. So then he his king, he said, that someone wants to go the right path of God, and he claims that God spoke with flesh and blood, so is your book written? Your book is written in Arabic. And how can a person like myself, how can I distinguish between this concept of religion and others? Anyway, the king says, it's difficult for me to believe unless I know some proofs. So he said to him, but the book of our Torah is filled with the words of Moshe and the children of Israel, and also what he did to Pharaoh, and he split the sea, and he saved his choice people, and he drowned those about whom he was, who angered him. He brought down the manna and gave them this to eat for 40 years in the desert, and he spoke with Moshe on the mountain of Sinai. All this is well known in the whole world. So, when the Muslim scholar said that the proof that God speaks with man, he brought it from his acceptance of the Torah which was given to Moses, which is clearly accepted in the Quran, that Moses was the prophet of God, and all the things that Moses writes are true, except that, as they claim, that afterwards Muhammad became the greater prophet. So the king said, I see, I need to ask the Jews. Because first he wasn't going to ask the Jews at all, because they're a very small group amongst the major religions and lifestyles of mankind of his time. But he says, the Jews today, they're what's left of the people of Israel. And I see, but before, I'm not bringing the whole discussion he had with the Christian scholar and also the general philosopher, but I see that they seem to have had this tradition themselves, so therefore now at long last he called one of the wise men of the Jewish people to ask about their faith. So So the Jew came, called him the Chaver. He says, we believe in the God of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, who took out the children of Israel from Egypt with signs and miracles, and he gave them food in the desert, and then he helped them to possess the land of Canaan after they crossed the sea and the Yarden with great miracles. And he sent Moshe through his Torah to reveal it to the people, and afterwards thousands of prophets that came after him, who all were trying to persuade the people of Israel to keep the Torah of Moshe, and they promised reward those who would observe it, and punishment those who would rebel against it. And we believe in what's written in the Torah. So the king said, I want to tell you, I would not have asked a Jew, because I thought that really the memory had even disappeared, because they're so lowly amongst the nations of the world. But I realized that good qualities have not left them. But still, I don't understand you. You shouldn't have introduced yourself, you believe in the God who revealed himself to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and to Moshe and the prophets. You should have said that you believe in the creator of the world, who has introduced order into the world, and has providence over the world. The one who created you. And this is accepted by anyone who follows religion. And a person who pursues the truth and tries to be similar to the Creator in his charity and his wisdom, that's religion. So the Jewish sage, the Chaver, answered him, and he said, you're speaking about religious concepts which work through speculation. Speculation introduces doubts. If you will ask the philosophers, there's hardly any issue which the philosophers discuss where they all agree. They have claims. Some of them, they say, well, you have to bring proofs. And some do bring some proofs, but others say, these proofs don't so much agree with me. In other words, according to the what's really the difference between the philosophical approach and the religious approach, some people say philosophy begins with doubt and religion begins with certainty. She says, but if you're going to approach speculation as the method of creation, it all contains certain elements of doubt. So the king said to him, all right, I see that the way you're speaking now is better than your opening remarks. So now I want to speak to you more about these matters. So the Chaver answers, my opening remarks, these are proofs, historical proofs. And this is the proof which does not require anything more. So the king said, how is this? So he says to him, I want to first mention to you the basic premise. So let's hear your premise. So Chaver says, if people have told you that the king of India is a man of great kindness, and therefore it's good to give him honor, to speak about his good actions, whatever you've heard of the righteousness of men of his land, and that his business and social dealings are all based upon trust and faithfulness, would you feel yourself obligated to believe it? So the king says, how can I have such an obligation? As long as I don't know, I'm doubtful if all Indians are reliable. I don't really know, do they have a king or not? Also, if they do have a king, is their rights on account of the king? Or is it their own righteousness? So the Chaver said to him, if there were to come to you messengers with presents of thanksgiving to you, and they say, we're going to give you these presents, then would you still have doubts whether whether there's really a king, whether they really have a palace? And what happens if they bring writings from him, and these writings contain ways of healing the sicknesses that you have in your palace, with your people, and they protect your health, and he also provides you with poisons for your enemies and those who fight against you? Then would you be obligated to be able to accept to some extent the help and the authority that he's giving you? So the king said, yes. If it really helps me, I would accept it. So the Chaver said, the question will ask you, how would you describe your impression of this king and the Indian state and the king? I would tell him that originally I had doubts, but when I get all these proofs from the records, from the letters I receive, and from the gifts that he sends, and from the healings that help. So this is how I want to answer the question with which you began. Because Moshe came to Pharaoh and said, the God of the Hebrews has sent me to you, the God of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Because these were matters that were known amongst the nations, and it was clear that God had helped the people, the tribe that developed into family, into people, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And he did not say that he didn't say to Pharaoh, the God of the heavens and the earth has sent me to you. Neither did he say, my creator and your creator. And that's why he begins his words to the 3 million of the people of Israel, I am Hashem your God, who took you out from the land of Egypt. He did not say, because I am the creator of the world, your creator. And as we see all the time, that's the approach which is expressed in the well-known Torah of Moses, Pentateuch. And that's how I began also when you asked me concerning my faith. I answered you what I and the people, the whole community of Israel is obligated to accept, because it's been clarified to them from the sight of their eyes, and afterwards, there were 3 million of them, and this continued for many generations through the additional words of all the prophets that have become fulfilled. And until this day, this is the lifestyle of the people of Israel, based upon the many historical proofs which are witnessed by millions of people. So the question is, if so, he says, fine, I understand from your angle, but then this Torah was only given to you, to the Jewish people, but others have no obligation to accept it. So the Prophet says, to some extent, that is true. It's true that this, however, is meant for the people of Israel, but for any human being who wants to join them. Because it's open for all human beings to join the people of Israel. If the obligation of the Torah would have been because He created us, to create all human beings, in which case there'd be no difference between people who have white skin or black skin. They're all His creatures. That we have a special obligation because He took us from Egypt. And therefore His honor has become clarified to us. We are therefore called the Skulam Ibnei Adam, the treasured people, because we have a special task, and meets a special obligation. So the king said to him, I see that you are really explaining who is the Jew, but this brings further questions. So this goes on and on, this whole discussion. I just want to say one very important word about the attitude of Yehuda Halevi, who says that the Torah is the ultimate basis of our obligations. The Torah is not speculation, and on the other hand, he is in fact known, Yehuda Halevi, as the most nationalistic and chauvinistic of all the philosophers, because he speaks about the special quality of the people of Israel, because we were shown miracles, and we were taught by prophets, and our forefathers were 3 million prophets who heard the voice of Hashem, and that faith is accompanied all the time. And therefore he says here, we are Segula, we've got a special quality. And later in his whole discussions, he even goes so far as to say that you can divide creatures in the world into the mineral world, the vegetable world, the animal world, the human world, and what he calls the people that has the divine quality, which is the people of Israel. In other words, we've got a special type of human being. What type? What do you mean by this? You can call it the people who have the Kinyan Eloki. We, in our national history, everything is based upon prophecy, that Hashem speaks with man. Now, You might say this is very nationalistic. On the other hand, the whole of his philosophy is put into the context not just of one person, but many of his people, very many of them. There was a wholesale politicization. They became Gerim. They became part of the Jewish people. In other words, the Jewish people are open also to others who want to join them. I want to accept this tradition of prophecy. And really, if you go in the Chumash more thoroughly, the Kinyan Eloki, divine quality, is mentioned in the Chumash. We go back to the Beit, the Breshit. It was possessed by Adam HaRishon. In other words, that there's the potential in the human being not only to speak to his fellow man, which we know is uniqueness of the human species. That's why, in fact, in Hebrew it's called Medaber, called the human species. The human species is known as the speaking species, those who can speak, communicate with one another. And the way in which we can communicate with one another through the voice, to have a mental, emotional communication, is the specific developed quality amongst the human species. We all possess that. But we possess something deeper, namely a possibility to speak with Hashem, and Hashem is to speak with us. Because that's the essence of the basis of our faith. That, as it says in the Chumash itself, that Hashem, the Creator, can speak with His created being. As you see by Adam HaRishon, they were on that level. So therefore, if you go into it more deeply, the deepest humanism is to recognize the power of the mind of the human being to link up with the mind of God. There can be a dialogue between God and man. And that's the real the Bible. That's the real biblical basis. And since this is why it's so important, it says in the Chumash, always to have in our memory, or in our national memory, the Exodus from Egypt, which demonstrated its power in opposition to the power of Paro, and the Egyptians who didn't believe in it, to get them even to believe in it, through what happened, the 10 plagues. And then this was transferred to the people of Israel, and the people of Israel should accept this as being the specific task to preserve for all generations, for the whole of mankind, that human beings, through the divine image, can indeed have, not through ordinary speech, but they can have a communication with Hashem. Both that Hashem answers our prayers, and both that we can even speak to Hashem, and Hashem will even someday speak to us, as He did in the past. And today He can do it also in certain hidden ways. But as we live still in time of Galut. But when the Gula will come, it will become revealed to others also that there is the possibility of the human being to be able to communicate more directly with Hashem. And any non-Jews who want to enter into this covenant, we say they become, as it were, reborn. They reach the high level. And also, even a Ger Tzedek is really the one who says, Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. Because he's become part of this, accepting the prophetic power which exists in every potentially, and which became an actual power, not just potentially, amongst the people of Israel. So, I want to suggest here, I was paraphrasing it from a rather older Hebrew translation. There's also a modern Hebrew translation, because it's written in the Arabic, the Hebrew translation, and there's also good English translations in the yeshiva. So it's really, to understand this matter more deeply, I want to recommend you should get to the English translation. Should have a few, I think, should have quite a few copies. and then you will understand this matter more easily. So I do just want to introduce here, this is from the next page from Rav Dessler, where we're speaking about the Decalogue. But the Decalogue, or the Ten Commandments, they appear in two versions. One in last week's Parsha, and which we've spoken about at length, and one in the Book of Devarim. Now, the Book of Devarim is Mishneh Torah. Why? Because it's basically, the Torah itself gives confirmation to the high prophetic speeches of Moshe Rabbeinu to the new generation. Because on account of the fact of the sin of the golden calf, so the generation that heard the Torah in the desert, shortly after Exodus from Egypt, they fell from their high level and they died in the desert. So, before Am Yisrael, people were to go into the land of Israel, and from here also see the great significance of living in the land of Israel, which is the national fulfillment of our mission to become a source for the spread of the acceptance of Hashem for all the nations of the world. As we see, for example, it says in the Book of Devarim that when all the nations of the world will see that the name of Hashem is called upon you, from you they will learn awe in front of God. And this can only happen, so it would appear, when we express the lifestyle on a far higher level than we find amongst most nations of holiness, to become a holy people, a holy nation in the land of Israel. Because there's so many mitzvot connected with the land of Israel which express also the significance of solving social problems and also having a just and a charitable society set up, which should be a model for the nations. That can come about. And there we'll find in chapter 5 of the book of Deuteronomy, in Jerusalem Bible, page 217, we find the same Decalogue, basically, with certain nuances which are expressed in a different way. And to understand the basic differences, and here I'm basing myself on many midrashim, and specifically the commentary of the Kli Yakar, which says that we can explain all the differences through the understanding the Decalogue was given in the desert. Why in the desert? At that time, that desert was no man's land, which means every man's land. It was specifically given before the people would enter the land, to demonstrate that really the Torah is intended for mankind. And in the preamble it says, you should become a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, because I want the whole earth to come to me. All mankind should follow the Torah. And really, here the Torah was given, it's true, was given primarily to the people of Israel after the experience of the Exodus from Egypt, which was a way whereby the people, through the ups and downs, especially the school of suffering which they had to go through, and all the tests which even the forefathers had to pass, and then their descendants had to pass, and still remain faithful to Hashem. So therefore, they were already equipped with the historical background of knowing that this group are representatives of the true one God, the God of loving kindness, the only God in the world. but it was open for everybody to join. And therefore it's even described in the Chumash how Hashem offered this Torah to all the nations around about. So although in the Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I took you out from Egypt, didn't take out the people of Ammon and Moab and the peoples of Ishmael and Esau out from the land of Egypt. So there it's addressed to the people of Israel. But it includes specific directions to Bnei Noach, in other words, to any human beings who all the children of Noach, and Noach was given a code mentioned in the beginning of the Chumash, important amongst them the absolute prohibition of murder and robbery and so on. So therefore, in fact, interesting, it explains a bit why the first 5, they are given, each one of them, with specific mentioning of Hashem Elokim, of God. The second 5, which are basically how to establish the minimum of a civilized society, it doesn't say the name of Hashem, and it does not say any motivation, any reward or punishment attached. Because if we keep, as a nation, we keep the aspect of being a priestly nation, which applies specifically to the people of Israel, that's where the Shabbat is mentioned. The second 5, they apply to all mankind. And people of Israel are there in order to bring this influence on mankind, even if they don't have that attachment with Hashem. Even these nations, they weren't taken out from Egypt. And these nations, you can't expect them to have the same obligations as the priestly nation. They have big obligations because they chose to follow the path of Hashem to spread the Torah, and the one who spreads the Torah has got a higher level than those who have to learn the basic principles, how to at least preserve the divine image to some extent in human affairs. So therefore, the emphasis is, the first ones, upon Am Yisrael being the priestly nation for all nations of the world. And it was therefore also an opening for all the nations. However, when the people of Israel themselves did not keep the covenant, and Hashem in the end agreed to continue the covenant with the people of Israel, and now they were on the threshold of entering into Eretz Israel. So now in the second description which Moshe Rabbeinu gives, he even gives it in a personal way to describe what the impact was on him and on the people when they witnessed Mount Har Sinai. So now it has to be preserved and put into greater fulfillment in the land of Israel, by the people of Israel, to as a nation have a greater power to influence the others. So therefore there are certain changes. One of the important changes is Shamov Zachor, for example. With regard to Shabbat, so in the first version is Zachor, remember the Shabbat. So the Midrash says, Shamov Zachor b'dibur echad, we say it Oz l'chadodi, Ishmul Keloch Miuchad. So in the desert, where the appeal was also the nations of the world, they're also told the Shabbat is there, it's fair to people of Israel, but it has an aspect which is important for all the nations. As you see, that it's also mentioned in the first chapter of the Chumash, at the end of the creation chapter. In other words, the concept of a Shabbat is to equalize the different groups amongst human beings. You've got to be able, even if you've got people who have a life of leisure because they're very wealthy, and then you have other people who are very poor and have to work very hard, you've got to give them a rest. In other words, Zachor means remember. There's such a concept in the rhythm of life to bring about an ease to the heavy burden of activity often placed in human society upon the workers, and those who are poorer. They have to have a rest. So the concept of Zachor is to remember it. But Shemirat Shabbat, which needs to observe the specific code of the 39 creative activities of the human being, which you have to stop on the Shabbat, that's a special observance of Shabbat necessary for the people of Israel. So therefore the second one is more Shamor, dealing here more specifically with the task as applied to the people of Israel. And then there's something interesting with regard to honoring parents. Honoring parents in the first, which is also part of the specific contribution to the people of Israel, to honor parents, it says in the first one, as you all know, it says that if you honor your father and your mother, then your days will be long. You'll have a long life, in the language I will give you. And in the second one, it adds something else, also the Manit Havlach. So the sages say, the Manit should be good for you. So in the first one, it speaks about Arichut Yamim. Now, Arichut Yamim, the days will be long, means your days will be filled with meaning. It's a short day in which you waste your time, and a long day in which you achieve many good things. So if you honor parents, it's a concept here, and similarly if your whole life is based upon a high level of morality, then your day will be filled with so many good deeds, all day pursuing virtue. So therefore they say Arichut Yamim is reference to eternal dimension of life. So it's really Olam Haba, it's the spiritual life. Lemanit Havlach is referred to the physical life. Physical life will also improve. The true physical life of continuity is mentioned only in the second Luchot. So that's going to be the subject of the Mussar here of Rav Dessler, which we'll leave to next time.
Thank you.